Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely brilliant to have you here. I want to wish you a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's great to have you with us. My name is Caroline Tuch. I work in the Workplaces team here at Sustrans Scotland. And for those of you who are new to us, we are a charity dedicated to making it easier for people to walk and to cycle. So today's event is the first in a series designed to provide people with the tools that they need to deal with the current situation, so to deal with current living and working. Now, as we all know, our homes, once our sanctuary, have been transformed into the epicentre of absolutely everything we do. So from living to working, schooling and socialising. And as you well know, we've had no acclimatisation period for this. So this series of events is designed to holistically support you during the period of lockdown and beyond. We're really excited to be partnering with a range of really inspiring speakers. So we have Olympians, business leaders, charitable founders and coaches covering key topics such as resilience and motivation. So what the webinars are seeking to do is really to provide us with skills that help us to adapt to modern life, increase our levels of physical activity and make positive change. Now, before I introduce you to Myles, there's just one or two housekeeping matters that I'd like to draw your attention to, if I may. So first of all, today's session will be recorded, and the reason behind that is to allow others to access it that are not able to join us right now. You'll maybe notice that you've been muted, but we'd honestly love to hear from you. Please feel free to type up any questions you may have in the question and answer box in as the webinar progresses. And if you want to, please feel free to vote on your favourite questions, and Myles Edwards will answer your questions after the presentation is finished. Now you'll notice that in the chat box there's a link that's labelled as Otter. Now this is a live transcript of what's being said for those who may find this useful. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to Myles Edwards. It's fair to say that he's a man of many talents. Myles is the Scottish running champion in the 1500 metre distance. He's a motivational speaker. He's even done a TEDx talk. And he co-founded the Gathimba Edwards Foundation. Now that's a charity that supports disadvantaged children in both Kenya and Scotland. The Gathimba Edwards Foundation has built 39 houses, and they support a total of just under 420 children, which is incredible when you consider that the charity has just celebrated its sixth birthday. So let me now hand you over to Myles. Thank you, Myles.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Caroline, I just want to say a special thank you to you. You've been a great friend for many years, and a huge support to Gathimba Edwards as well. What we've been able to achieve wouldn't have been possible without you. So thank you very much for that and the opportunity to be here today. So today I'd like to tell my story, but more importantly to use it and to use the stories of people that I've met through my athletics career and also through my work in Kenya with the Gathimba Edwards Foundation. And hopefully by using those, I can inspire some of you to achieve the things that you'd like to in life, and hopefully encourage you to deal with challenging circumstances at the moment and any setbacks you face in the future as best as possible. So there we go. Not the smoothest when it comes to technical things. I've been involved in running since for as long as I can remember. My dad, Myles Edwards, he was a successful athlete, mostly over the marathon distance and in hill running. And as you can see in the picture on the left, I was running from a very young age. But I think I'm told by my mum, who I think is listening today as well, that it started long before then, when just a few days after I was born, I was taken to watch a local cross-country race before going home from the hospital for the first time. So I think it was inevitable that I was going to end up having a career in athletics. My dad, Myles Edwards, was and still is undoubtedly my hero. He was diagnosed with myeloma, bone marrow cancer, in 2006, and I'll never forget when my mum and I went to visit him for the first time when he was in isolation. And as we were walking up the corridor where there's various rooms with patients who were understandably tired from the treatment, and most of them hooked up to intravenous drips. And when we got to my dad's room, we could see this funny motion coming from behind the curtain. And as we got into the room, he'd had an exercise bike installed into the room, and he was still attached to his drip, but sweat was dripping off him. And I always think back to that when I'm dealing with something challenging in running or in life or work. And I think that if he can deal with cancer in that way, then it makes it that bit more achievable for me to deal with the challenge I'm facing. And I think it's really important to use inspirational people in your own lives, or inspirational people in the public to inspire you and to encourage you through those difficult times. I thought I'd share some of my dad's motivational mantras today. He enjoyed doing presentations which included these, and I'll leave you just to read through them, but I'll cover each of them briefly as well. The first one's a quote from a friend of his, Mike Turner, who was an incredibly tough athlete. He was the team manager for the British Olympic team in the Seoul Olympics in 1988. And he was a big believer that no matter what difficulty you face, and he faced a lot of challenges in his athletics career, but also more so later in life when he had health complications and had to have a leg amputated. And he believed that no matter what you're going through, if you just set small goals and try your best to overcome those a little bit at a time, it can give you huge satisfaction and huge motivation to continue to try and beat whatever it is that you're facing. The second point, my dad was a huge believer in being able to train yourself to have, as he called it, 100% positive mindset, but certainly as close to that as possible. And during his battles with cancer, I remember when he was diagnosed for the first time, when he was diagnosed initially, the first thing he said to the doctor was, "I've got a cross-country race coming up. Will I be able to do that?" And I think it was his way of dealing with it. But certainly the positivity and also the exercise that he was able to do during his 13-year battle, I'm in no doubt that played a huge role in him being alive for that period of time. The third point about not waiting until you've reached your goal to be proud of yourself. I think this is a really important point, particularly for people who are training for events like a marathon, which are not every weekend. Things can go wrong, and it may be that you're injured by the time the marathon comes about. And if you've not given yourself credit or felt proud for some of those goals you've achieved along the way, I think that can be quite a waste. And so it's really important to basically give yourself a pat on the back when you're achieving small goals en route to the bigger ones. The fourth point about the phrase, which is probably my favorite mantra of all, no one will handle this better than me. And what my dad advised people to do was that if you're about to face something daunting that you're nervous about, just say to yourself that nobody will handle this better than me. And that was absolutely his mindset throughout his battle with cancer. I've used it many times. More recently, I did some offshore survival training, which I was quite nervous about, going underwater in the helicopter. And just saying that to yourself beforehand can really help you to calm down and be ready for what's about to come. The second point from the bottom, my dad always used to say that there's two words in the English language which can be used but should never be used together. And one is give and the other is up. You can give someone a present and you can walk up the stairs, but you should never give up. And finally, to enjoy it. There's many things we can choose to do in life, and I think it's important that the passions you choose, whether it's in sport with athletics or cycling, but whatever it is in life, the most important thing is that you enjoy it. And I think that's particularly important for youngsters getting involved in sport. The enjoyment factor's the main thing. In terms of my own athletics career, I've been lucky enough to represent Scotland indoor and outdoors, and also to win the Scottish Championship indoors and outdoors as well. That was both over 1,500 metres. But now, as a result of various things, that was back in 2015. And my focus now is the New York Marathon, which as it stands, is still due to take place in November, and I'm preparing as if it will take place. I'm not sure whether that will happen. But my dad, as I mentioned, was a marathon runner. His best time was 2 hours and 18 minutes, and he ran 6 marathons during his career, the last of which was New York. And it was amazing watching him on the streets of New York. And then a few years later, being there with him when in the picture on the right, when I ran the 5K there. And so we've got special memories there as a family, visiting with my mum as well. And I think there's 2 ways I could have looked at this. It is sad that my dad sadly passed away in November last year, and I could have looked at this and thought it's a real shame that he's not going to see me complete the marathon. But I think it's really important to flip negatives in life, and the way that I look at it is he knew I was going to be doing it, and that's a special thing for me to hold on to, and I'll definitely be thinking of him when I'm on the streets of New York, whenever that may be. So back in 2019, this is a picture from the start line of a race which was organised by my dad and a friend of his, Fraser Klein, and it was for the opening of Aberdeen Sports Village, which is a fantastic facility in our home city. And 2 Kenyan athletes were invited over from Kenya for the race: Gideon Gathimba, who's on the right of the picture, and Bethwell Bergen, second from right. And the idea was that they were going to try and break 4 minutes for the mile for the first time in Aberdeen. And it was my job, along with Ian Geary, who's third from the right in the photo, to be the pacemakers for the race. And so we had a meeting with Gideon and Bethwell beforehand to find out how quickly they wanted us to go through halfway, 800 meters in. And much to my surprise, the time that they wanted to go through in was 2 seconds quicker than my personal best at that point. So it was going to be impossible, or certainly very difficult, for me to keep up with them. So in the end, I ended up pacemaking for the British athletes on the left. And Gideon and Bethwell went on and ran 3 minutes and 57 seconds for the mile, which was incredible to watch, incredible to be a part of, and definitely started my fascination with Kenyan athletics and how it was possible for humans to run that quick. So fast forward a couple of years, and I went to E10 in Kenya for the first time with a friend of mine, Dan Mulhare, who's in the red t-shirt in the photo. We were both, we graduated from university and were working part-time jobs that we didn't really see ourselves doing for our whole career. And Dan phoned me up one day and said, "How do you fancy going to Kenya for 3 months training?" And it took me all of about 30 seconds to say yes, and to ask Dan to book the flights so that I couldn't talk myself out of it. And so off we went a few months later, and it was a life-changing, incredible experience. On the first or second day, we met David Rudisha in the green jacket, who many of you will know as the man who won the 800 meters at the London 2012 Olympics and broke the world record in the process. And also Lynette Masai on the right, who is a former world 10,000 meter champion. And it turned out she was our landlord in E10 as well. And this is just an example of the magic of E10, which is also known as the home of champions. Within a stone's throw of where you are in E10, there will be a world champion, an Olympic champion, or a world record holder. And it's incredibly inspiring for young people in Kenya, especially people aspiring to be athletes, because the bar is already set at that height, and so they're already aiming very high. And I think that plays a massive factor in the success of Kenyan athletes. These were our living conditions when we first arrived. It was quite different from what we were used to at home. There was just one mattress on a muddy floor. There was also a power cut that evening. So we were out of our comfort zones, to say the least. Power cuts, interestingly, are quite common in E10, and particularly when major sporting events are about to take place. People will be in bars or hotels watching, and the power will be cut, and this is as a result of a bribe being paid to the power company, so that people then flock to the places which have generators. So it was a different world for us to be a part of. This was our kitchen, and sorry for the next picture, this was the toilet, just to give you an idea of the things that we had to get used to. This is a photo not of our accommodation, but of the High Altitude Training Centre in E10. And this is where many people like Mo Farah and lots of international athletes, Team GB, will go and stay when they're training in E10. the cost, I think, is about £40 per night, whereas our monthly rent was £35. And so it was a no-brainer for us as just recently graduated students. But I'm also really glad and proud of the way that we did it, because we were able to mingle a lot more with local Kenyan athletes, and also learn a lot more about what it takes for them to be successful, rather than being based in this almost mini Europe in E10. This is a store which is no longer called the London Marathon store, but back in 2011, I found it a fascinating place. When we initially saw it, we assumed that it would be a shop to do with running, perhaps selling running clothes or information about the London Marathon for Kenyan athletes. But in actual fact, it sells groceries. So basically bread, eggs, sweeties, water, that sort of thing, which we found quite amusing. But the point in telling this story is that for many years, this London Marathon store was the closest that this lady, Mary Kitani, had come to the London Marathon. And this photo was taken after her first race, which was the Shoe for Africa Women's 10K in E10. She finished in 21st position, and there was only prizes available for the top 20. And I've been told since by the organizer, Toby Tanzer, who runs the charity Shoe for Africa, that do fantastic work, that Mary vowed that day to never finish out with the prize places again. And so, true to her word, Mary has gone on to win the London Marathon 3 times, the New York Marathon 4 times, and is the second fastest female marathon runner ever without male pacemakers being in the race. And Mary is a great example of how athletics can change your life. So many Kenyan athletes have transformed their lives and the lives of others with their success, and we're really grateful to the support that Mary has given to the Myles Edwards Foundation as well. This is the running track in E10. So it's a red mud dirt surface. For me, the first thing that I thought is just, wow, this is the track that has produced or helped to produce world Olympic champions, world record holders. And so immediately I thought, you don't need the best facilities to be successful. What you need is always within you, and it's determination, sacrifice, all these sort of factors which come into play. But on top of that, I saw just how hard Kenyan athletes worked. I think probably at the point when I first went to Kenya, I was training perhaps 4 times a week, 5 times a week, something like that. These guys and girls were training sometimes 3 times a day. They would take a Sunday off as a rest day, but on other days they would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They would go for an easy paced run. They'd come back, have a light breakfast, go back to bed. Then they would get up again around 10 o'clock and do a harder session, after which they would have lunch and then relax for a lot of the day. And in some cases, they would go for a 3rd run, which was an easy recovery run at around 4 o'clock. And so it was hugely eye-opening for me to learn just how hard you have to work to be successful in athletics. Over the next few years, I was determined to go back to Kenya. Unfortunately, I was injured quite a bit on the first trip, which, as you'll learn in this presentation, injury's been quite a large part of my career. But during the times when I was injured, I was able to spend more time with Gideon Gathimba, who's second from right in the top left picture there, and meet people within the community in Karatina, which is a different town that we also support children in. It's about 8 hours drive away from E10. And one of these experiences was truly life-changing. I will never forget the feeling of visiting the Pavilion Village Children's Home, which at that point was home to 22 children, many of whom, all of whom were out of school, and many of whom were there because they'd lost their parents due to HIV. In some cases, they'd been abandoned, and in a couple of cases, abused by their parents. But despite the challenges that these children had faced, they were so happy and so content and so proud of their surroundings. As they showed us around the home, the home required quite a bit of work to be done to it, but they were so happy to be there. And these are just some photos of what the home was like on that first visit, with broken windows. This, on the photo on the left there, is one of the bedrooms, and on the right is the outdoor kitchen. Gideon and I left that day just feeling completely inspired and committed to trying to do what we can, or we could, to change the lives of the children. And so when I got home, to the UK, I posted this picture on my Facebook page of the beds that they were sleeping on. The mattresses that you see there are just really thin pieces of foam, which I'd only really seen in the garden before, perhaps for kneeling on. And amazingly, after a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, we were able to raise almost 3 times the amount that we needed for 22 mattresses, which were going to be a Christmas present for the children that year. And so we were able to get the mattresses delivered in typical Kenyan style delivery. You see all sorts of fascinating things on the back of trucks, and sometimes cows on the back of motorbikes, wardrobes on the back of push bicycles. So this is not one of the more extreme examples. But with the extra money that we'd raised, we were able to get some of the children back into school and also eating regular meals as well. During this time, I'd become even closer to Gideon Gathimba and great friends with him and his family. And it was clear to me that he was very different from a lot of athletes that I'd met. Many people come to E10 and enjoy great success from the hard work that they're able to do there, but they're constantly running past people in really desperate situations, whereas Gideon was different, and he was always really passionate about helping children in his own community and wider parts of Kenya as well. And so it was with these experiences that we established the Gathimba Edwards Foundation in 2014, which Caroline kindly mentioned. We've been able to support 417 children through school, to build 39 houses and to start 12 family-run businesses as well. For me, one of the most amazing things from this is what the children at the Pavilion Village have been able to go on and achieve. Peter Mwenda on the left there with Agnes, who runs the home. She runs it along with her husband, John. Peter has graduated from university in Nairobi, where he studied criminology, and his genuine goal in life is to be the president of Kenya, and he's a pretty impressive and determined guy, so watch that space. The children in the middle and on the right, who Purity and Ruel, Daniel Moses and Jennifer and Diana, are some of the new children who have been able to join the home since we built a 16-bed dormitory there with volunteers in 2015. So it's been fantastic to welcome new children to the home, and there's now 39 children who have benefited from staying at the Pavilion Village. As part of our work with Gathimba Edwards, we also support local children with disabilities in Scotland, and Evie is one of the fantastic little girls that we've been able to support. Evie has huge challenges in life with cerebral palsy, severe dystonia, resistant epilepsy, and meeting Evie and her parents and her little brother has been amazing, and we're really proud to be able to support them with services and equipment, such as a custom-built play area in their back garden. We do lots of things fundraising-wise, which I won't go into very much today, but the trips that we organise to Kenya have played a big part in what we've been able to do, and certainly the photo on the right of the group fartlek session in E10 in Kenya is something that I miss during these challenging times that we're in with coronavirus. You've got twice a week, over 200 people, men and women, turn up at the same time for a relatively casually arranged but quite structured training session. So fartlek has a varied pace, so you could do something like 30 times 1 minute very fast, and then you're supposed to jog in between. But I'm usually right at the back of these sessions, and it doesn't feel like they're jogging on the recovery sections. I wanted to tell you a story, a really incredible story about a family that we met and are now really proud to support. Christine is the mother on the left of the photo here, and she, for 14 years, I think it was, 13 or 14 years, lived in this house by the side of the road, and another identical house. They're about 3 meters by 3 meters. And the way that we met the family was that Bethwell Bergen, from the other Kenyan athlete who was over in Aberdeen back in 2009, regularly trained on that running route there, and he would often see the family and think, well, I wonder why it is that they're in this situation. What had happened was that they were living in a forest, which is quite common in Kenya, but is not legal. So when the government come along, they are entitled to evict families from forests. And so the family were evicted, and they were put on the waiting list to be given a plot of land that they could build their own house on. But sadly, when they got to the top of the list, the local chief of that area stole the land and gave it to his son, which resulted in Christine and her children living by the side of the road in these two houses for 14 years. I'd never seen conditions like that. When they were all in the room and ready to sleep, not everybody could lie down, so some of them were sitting with their backs up against the wall. As you can see in this picture here, one corner of the room was used for the kitchen, and because they cook with firewood or charcoal, there's a lot of smoke in the room, and it's really, really difficult to sleep. We've done a couple of sleepovers at families' houses in Kenya to raise funds and awareness for new houses, and that's just one night, and it was extremely difficult. So I can't imagine what it's like to live like that every night of your life. And this is where they store their clothes and items, just in the roof of the house. But what I'd like to show you now is where the family are living now, and just how with teamwork anything is possible to change the circumstances of other people. I think it's really important in life to do what you can to help others. And this is just a short video to show you how Caroline and many others came together to achieve it. think it was safe to say that a few beers had been enjoyed by the volunteers when they were dancing, singing those Scottish songs. I think that's just a fantastic example of how people from different cultures, different countries, and with different personalities can come together to achieve really special things, not only for themselves, but more importantly for other people as well. I think this question on the screen now, what is your why, is a question which I ask myself from time to time. And basically what I mean by that is, what is your biggest motivator? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? For me, there's many people who have inspired me. Probably one of the ones who has had a big impact on me is a friend of mine, Neil Jaffrey, who sadly was killed in a road accident in 2014. And Neil was a huge supporter of the charity and also a great friend to myself. And around that time, I was in the process of training for the British Championships, and I was really motivated to try and do well in Neil's memory. Unfortunately, the British Championships didn't go so well for various reasons. I probably was working a bit too many hours. I was traveling quite a lot and not getting the sleep that you need to recover fully as an athlete. And so after the British Championships, we set the new goal of the Scottish Championships, which were in the second part of 2015. And it was in my home city of Aberdeen, for the first time in the 132-year history of the competition. So there was a big incentive to try and do well there. But I felt no pressure going into that either, because my main goal had passed and I hadn't been able to achieve that. So I think it showed me that as I was relaxed there, it's so important to try and get yourself into that state before a big performance or event. And I'm just going to show you a small part of this race. The first 3 minutes aren't the most interesting, just because finals can often be quite slow and tactical. So I'll fast forward just to one lap to go. One of the things that stands out for me is the night before, my dad, who didn't often say these sort of motivational phrases to me in person before those sort of big events, but that night he said to me that when you get into that home straight, tell yourself that nobody has more guts or determination than you. And it doesn't really matter if that's the case, because how can you judge who has more determination? But the most important thing is what you believe. And if you go into a sporting event or any challenge that you're facing with that mindset that you're going to be the most determined and that nobody's going to handle it better than you, it gives yourself a great chance of succeeding or overcoming it. So I'll just play the last one. The favourite for this race is in second place at the moment, Andrew Butcher. So some of you might recognise the name. And that's me in fourth place in the funny long white socks. So it was certainly the case that in that home straight, my dad's words were ringing in my ears, and it really showed me just how a 100% mindset can make such a difference. Of course, you have to put in the hard work physically, but the mental side of things is equally as important. And to cross the finish line and at the track, which I've been at many times since I grew up, and to do it in front of friends and family, and for my dad to be there, was a really special moment. And it makes all the sacrifice and the hard work that I put in along the way worthwhile. In terms of dealing with setbacks, setbacks can of course come in all shapes and sizes. For me, I've dealt with a number of injuries along the way. In 2015, probably one of the best moments of my life was taking part in a fundraising cycle to raise money for this fantastic boy, MJ, who has cerebral palsy. And we were looking to raise enough to get an eye gaze computer system that would enable him to communicate with his parents for the first time. And we were able to do that. We were able to raise £14,000. It was a 300-mile cycle in 24 hours. It took me a little bit longer than 24 hours, but we started in Glasgow and finished in Inverness. Unfortunately, during the cycle, I went into it naively thinking that my running fitness could carry me through it, which it didn't. I had some Achilles issues and then ended up having to have knee surgery as well. And this put me out for a period of a couple of years. I think probably the initial 6 or 8 weeks after the operation, I wasn't able to bend my leg. The surgery hadn't gone perfectly. So not only was I unable to run, but it was quite challenging for everyday things. And when you see the nature of the toilets in Kenya as well, where you have to squat, and if you can't squat, it was a problem in everyday life as well. During this time, as you can see in the photo on the right, Andrew Butchert, who I was able to beat for the one and only time I think I've probably beaten him, he went on to have fantastic performances in the Rio Olympics and the World Championships in London in 2017 as well. Meanwhile, I was stuck on a gym bike watching these, and it was ironic because after that cycle, I said to myself, I was never getting on a bike again. It was really, really tough. But here I was back on a bike, because that was the only non-weight bearing exercise I was able to do. And I think there's two ways that I could have looked at that. I could have looked at it and given up and thought, oh, there's no chance I'm ever going to reach those sort of heights. Or you can look at it and be inspired. And it's not to say that I would have gone on to reach the Olympics and to be coming alongside Mo Farah in the Olympic and World Championship finals. But I think it's really important to look at that in a positive way and think that anything is possible when things go right. Sometimes all you need is just a bit of determination to get through the setback, but then a period of consistency that can result in anything. Another thing I think is really important is to find the positives, but also to flip negatives into positives. There's so much negativity around in the world, in the media, sometimes from other people within your social circles. And I think there's always a way to turn a negative into a positive. During the time I was injured, I was lucky enough to meet my now wife and daughter. We had a particularly challenging year last year with them being stuck in Kenya due to visa issues and our wedding due to take place, and my dad being terminally ill as well. But we got there in the end with hard work and just self-belief that things would come together. They arrived the day before the wedding, and they were able to spend 3 weeks with my dad before he passed away as well. And so it's always really important to look outside your bubble, and if it's running or cycling or whatever your passion is in life, look beyond that, and there are almost always positives out with that to be able to focus on. As things were starting to get better for me running wise, I went for an acupuncture session, which ended up collapsing my lung. The needle was put in at the wrong angle. So I thought, yeah, this is another challenge. But again, it was a case of just thinking that the comeback would be stronger than the setback. And I think that's probably what's got me through the challenges I've faced, is always not really focusing on the injury itself, but by focusing on what it's going to feel like when I get back, and the determination I'm going to have as a result of the setbacks when it does come to those big competitions. And a few months later, I was able to be back running and run my 10K personal best of 31:52 and win some local races as well. And so I think it's really, really important not to always narrow in your focus on the setback that you're facing, but to look to the future and think, when I get over this, I'm going to be seriously determined to achieve something. The quote I mentioned at the start, I wanted to just mention again, because although my dad had inspired me hugely throughout his life, when he was in hospital in the final 3 months of his life, and after being told that there was no more medication that would work to treat the myeloma, bone marrow cancer, he was regularly telling himself that nobody will handle this better than him. And probably the most inspiring thing I've seen was there was about 3 or 4 occasions where the doctors and nurses didn't think he'd make it through the night as a result of pneumonia and an incident with a catheter. And on one occasion, this amazing doctor called Stephanie went home at night, and as I mentioned, did not think that she was going to see my dad alive the next morning. And when she came in, this was the picture, the scene that she saw. He was doing resistance band exercises on the bed, step downs, just to basically say, I'm still here and I'm still fighting. And I think for me, it's so inspiring to think of that when I'm facing something challenging. And I'm sure there's people in your own lives that you can look to for inspiration like that as well. Another thing throughout all the setbacks that I feel is really important is to learn something from it so that it doesn't happen again. It's quite a common quote that you either win or you learn, but I really don't feel like I missed out on a huge amount, or that I lost throughout those years that I was injured. I learned something from each one and rectified things in my training to make sure it didn't happen again. And when it comes to the current lockdown, I think there's lots of different ways that you can deal with it. As a runner, we're quite lucky because we were still able to exercise once a day. More challenging for other sports people where more specific equipment is needed. But in terms of what you can do during the lockdown, I think it's important to have a structure to your day, focus on spending time doing things that you enjoy out with work as well, whether it's spending time with family. And then also with work, this has been a challenging time for charities. And so we had to be creative. And I thought, I need to do something. There's an idea I'd had years ago about a virtual race where everybody got a cool Kenyan shaped medal. And this provided the catalyst for us to set that up. And had it not been for the coronavirus situation, I probably would have put it off as I had been for the last few years. And that has enabled us to generate £5,508, which is enabling us to feed 71 families who are out of work during this situation in Kenya. So really important to think outside the box and be as creative as you can as well. Throughout these setbacks, something else that I feel that I've appreciated more is time. Prior to this, if I was doing a hard interval session and there was perhaps, say there was 10 times 1 mile reps, I would probably have looked at that and been at the halfway point and thought, oh my goodness, I've got another 5 to go, and not been looking forward to it. Whereas when you've had something taken away from you that you love doing so much, you really value it and you really want it back. And so now when I'm in these sessions, I'm thinking, give me more. And I really appreciate the time when I'm injury free and I'm able to do what I love. And I'm wishing for an extra rep and more time in the sessions. Just finally, almost coming towards the end here, leaving no stone unturned was a big thing that my dad always focused on, particularly when it came to injuries. And I'm sure many physios can recall my dad at times probably pestering them, but he believed it was so important to leave no stone unturned when you were trying to find a solution to your problem. And this can be related to anything in life, not just injuries. And we're really lucky in Aberdeen to have some fantastic people, and in Kenya as well, that have supported me and my family through the difficult times. But if you surround yourself with people like that, and most importantly, I think positive people beyond their medical expertise, these people at different times have provided myself and my dad with real motivation and given us more resilience as a result of their personalities. And that's something that we're really grateful for. The final story that I'd like to share today is about an amazing lady called Rhoda, who is pictured on the left with her 2 children. And the 2 photos on the right are of myself and my friend David. And this was during a 10K race the day after that we'd met Rhoda in Kenya. And when I first saw this picture, I did not think I would ever be sharing it on a presentation, but it was the hardest race I've ever been a part of, and David would agree with that. We were at altitude, we were dehydrated. I had a stitch from 3K onwards, 10K race. But the inspiration that Rhoda had given me from the day before, she went through a horrific ordeal at the hands of her ex-husband. He attacked her with a machete. She lost half of one of her arms and lost her hand on the other arm. But despite that, she gets on with life. She's so positive and so determined. And she may have lost her hands, but she has not lost hope. And it was just so powerful for us, and certainly made sure I finished that race. But more importantly, it stayed with me beyond that. And I think it's really important in life, if anyone tells you that you're not capable of achieving something, whether it's because of age, gender, ability, or anything, think of people like Rhoda, think of people that inspire you, and do everything you can to prove them wrong, and tell yourself that nobody will handle this better than you. Thank you very much for listening. I'd be delighted to answer any questions people might have.
Well, Myles, thank you so much for your very thought-provoking talk. It's fair to say that you've inspired me, and I know you've inspired so many other people over the years. And I've little doubt that your story has inspired some of our participants this afternoon. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
With us. I've got a few, I think we've got time for a few questions. I'd really be keen to, the other thing I was going to say before I go into the questions is that I'm a huge fan of your lovely dad's mantra, no one can handle this better than me. It's definitely a good one to have in your back pocket. So thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, so I have a few questions, if that's okay. Yeah, I'm really keen, you're obviously very busy with your training and such like, but what would your advice be to someone that's, maybe not been active for a while? How, where would they start? What's your advice to them?
It's a good question. I think the first thing is to find some motivation to do it, whatever it is that you're looking to start doing. If it's walking, if it's running, cycling, or any sort of activity, find some motivation and have a reason as to why you want to do it. I think that's really important in the first instance. Finding something you enjoy, like I mentioned, is also so important. And doing it gradually. I think I've probably learned the hard way that if you can have all this motivation and you think, right, I'm going to go out and walk 5 days this week, but if you look back to the week before and you've maybe not walked at all, or you've only walked once, it's so easy to get injured, and then that can bring a equally as tough challenge the following week. So if you can build it up gradually, and the rule that I now use in running training is just 10%, adding 10% each week. So if you've ran, say, 40 miles the week before, don't run more than 44 the week after. And generally that does work, because it's much better to just take 1 day off if you need to, instead of being forced to take a couple of months off.
Brilliant, thanks, that's really sound advice. What happens if someone says to you, I'm so busy, so busy with work, I'm at home, I'm maybe homeschooling the kids, there's so much on the go. How can I can't fit in physical activity. What's your response to that? Have you got any tips that you can give folks? Yeah,
it's certainly a very valid point, and since Dahlia's come into my life, it does present that extra time challenge. Of course, it's absolutely worth it in so many ways, but it does add a time constraint. And so my dad, I think, I won't put it as bluntly as my dad put it, but my dad always used to say there's 2 5 o'clocks in the day, and not everybody knows that. Whereas, but I think you can take something from that, and you can just adapt your schedule a little bit. I'm sure I certainly am guilty of spending too much time on my phone. So try cutting off 45 minutes the night before on your phone, getting up 45 minutes earlier the next day, getting the exercise in, and then you've done 2 positive things. You've helped your eyesight, you've spent less time on your phone, but you've also got your exercise in as well. So I think, although it can seem challenging to fit things in, there usually is a way. If you look at your day and you think, what's in this day that I actually don't need to do? And if you're spending time on scrolling through Instagram, Facebook and whatnot, then I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, good advice. Thank you. I've been writing down what you said there, Myles, so thanks. I've got there's a really nice comment come in from Jude. Thank you very much, Jude. What she's saying is she's thoroughly enjoying the session, which is brilliant to hear. She's on a couple of marathons, although not fast, but who cares about time? That's brilliant. And she knows sorry, I'm saying she, it could be he or she. I'm sorry, Jude, forgive me. But they don't know, and they know the mental stamina that is required. Yeah, they're also saying that they live with a terminal blood cancer in their family too, and understand the importance of staying positive and focusing. So she's saying to you, he or she's saying to you, thanks for sharing your story today.
And Jude, thank you for that comment and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've just got another couple of questions, if I may. In terms of participants, if you've got any questions, please feel free to share them. We've got time for another couple of questions, if there's any burning ones you want to share with Myles.
I did one actually from Rosemary Kerr. Have you seen that, Caroline?
Let me see.
I can answer it if you like.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll actually, Rosemary, this is a brilliant question. So what do you say to people that you're too old?
I think I guess it depends what they're saying that you're too old to do, but whatever it is they're saying that you're too old to do, go out and do it amazingly, and then just do your talking for me, if it was running and somebody had said to me that I was, you're too old to be doing that, I'd be training hard, I'd have those words ringing in my ears, and I'd use that as a positive. I remember when, slightly different, but I remember when I was out injured for a couple of years, and on a couple of occasions people said to me, "Oh, you used to be that runner, didn't you?" And I thought, I'm still that runner, and I used that. I just had that, keep that in your head, because negative comments like that can provide so much motivation, and sometimes even more motivation than positive ones. So yeah, get out there and show them that the age is just a number.
Oh, I like that one as well. Thank you. My pen's running out. I'm writing down all these top tips. What else have we got? Oh, Jude. Oh, okay. Thanks for keeping right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you to her for clarifying that. And then Grace, we've got a question. Oh, this is really nice to hear, Myles. Grace is saying it's a fantastic session. What do you feel is the best type of training plan for a marathon? I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that.
Yes, a good question. Grace, you may well have done more marathons than me, so you could know more in this area. I've been trying to learn as much as I can in this marathon build-up. So at the moment I'm probably 5 months out from New York, if New York takes place. So what I would be looking to do, and I've taken, my coach has played a big part in this, Lewis Walker, but just speaking to other people, I would be looking to have a marathon specific build up of 12 weeks before that marathon. The first 10 weeks of that would be the key training, the final 2 weeks being a taper, just to reduce things down. Well done 2 marathons. Nice.
I know, amazing.
2 more than me. There's certainly fantastic plans out there that you can get on the internet. Somebody's mentioned Hal Higdon, who I've heard of, and I would recommend that's worth looking at. For me, I'm going to try a 12-week building up the mileage gradually. In the 2 months prior to that, which I still have, I'm going to look to get my mileage from around 60 miles a week, which it is at the moment, to 80, 90, but not getting hung up on the mileage. If there's a week where I'm tired, I'm going to take a down week and I'm going to reduce the mileage. I'll reduce the intensity as well. So I think it's really important to listen to your body. If even if you do have a plan, don't worry about missing a session within that plan. Each week probably I'll have 2 sessions, one a marathon specific and another of working a different system, whether that's a threshold run or a shorter interval session. So there's lots of different things that you can include, hill sessions as well. But I think the biggest piece of advice would probably be to listen to your body and also stick to soft surfaces if you can. That can play a big role in protecting the joints.
Thanks, Myles. There's some more questions coming in. Yeah, I'm just conscious of time. We've got maybe a few more minutes left. So Daniel has asked another great question. I think this is particularly pertinent just now. I think we can all understand where you're coming from, Daniel. So how do you put yourself up if you're feeling down in the dumps and not wanting to do anything? I've got my pen handy here. That's
great. Yeah, I'm just reading that question there just now as well. So yeah, sorry, it was I thought I was reading the same question, but it was a different one there. So yeah, if you're feeling down in the dumps, and how do you pick yourself up? I think there's lots of ways to do it. I think it's important to look at why you're feeling down in the dumps as well, and if you can do something to address that, that's really important. But moving on from there, for me, it's worked really well to use other people's success in the face of adversity to inspire me. I remember I found it I think it's good to be easily inspired. When I was growing up, I used to watch videos and I read Lance Armstrong's book. I was so inspired, and of course latterly felt a bit cheated by that when the drugstore revelations came out. But it didn't take away the inspiration I got from that, and I had so many hard training sessions that his book got me through. So to try and find inspiration from other people and channel that into to whatever it is that you're hoping to achieve, that you feel at the moment you're not able to do, and I hope that can make a difference.
Great, thank you very much, Myles, and a brilliant question, Daniel. Thank you. I think we've got one from Andy. So Andy's saying, thanks, Myles. Truly uplifting to see the work in Kenya and hear your stories. Oh, sorry to hear, Andy, that you're coming back from a broken leg. So he's saying, great to hear what you had to say about coming back stronger. Yeah, that's always good, isn't it? Who are the sports people you admire and why? And for later, when you're back up on your feet, Andy, what is your killer speed session? This will maybe be the last question. I'm just conscious of time. Thank you, Myles.
Thanks, Andy. I see some other questions there as well that I don't know how it works afterwards, but I can probably type the answers to that once we've gone off the recording. Sorry to hear about the broken leg, Andy. I hope you get back as soon as possible, and I'm sure you will come back stronger. In terms of the sports people that I admire, there's a lot. I got great inspiration from Kelly Holmes winning double gold in the Olympics. I just thought that was phenomenal after what she'd been through in the years leading up to that, and an amazing achievement. Eliud Kipchoge is one. I think he lives an incredibly clean life, has great morals, and just a quick story, one of the days after my dad had one of these incidents in hospital where they didn't think he'd wake up the next morning. The next day it was the sub-2 attempt where Kipchoge did end up running 1 hour 59, and my dad was just he enjoyed it so much, and I cheekily sent a message to a friend of mine, Julian Wonders, who was a pacemaker as part of Eliud's run, and said, I don't suppose it'd be possible for Eliud to send a bit of a video just to encourage my dad. And amazingly, the next day, the day after his sub-2, he sent a video to my dad encouraging him to stay strong and that he would get through things. And I think that probably makes Kipchoge the standout hero that still active in sport for me, because he does things that's beyond his sport, and I don't think there's many people in the past that have done that. I think it does put him in the categories of up there with Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, that type of level of person that inspires way beyond the sport. And then the killer speed session, a couple of different ones. In my 800 days, I used to do funny sessions like 2 times 400 meters with a 15-minute break in between, but it was flat out 400, and you get a really good break in the 15 minutes, and then your legs are tired to run that second flat out 400, and it worked very well specifically for championship finals where it's slow at the start and fast at the end. More recently, 10 times a mile with 2.5 minutes in between, and doing those just quicker than 10k pace was fun but horrible at the same time. And I think you get a lot from that because you're running a longer distance than your event at a similar or quicker pace, which is psychologically really good when you come to the 10k because you've done more in training. So good luck with the recovery.
Yeah, hope it goes well. I'm conscious that we've got other questions, but I'm really aware of the time. So Myles, would you mind, we'll keep a note of these questions, and you can maybe help out with some answers, and when we send emails to everybody, follow-up emails, would that be okay?
Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to do that.
That'd be super. Yeah, thank you very much, Myles, for providing us with, I feel it's been like a dose of motivation and inspiration over the last hour, so thank you very, very much. And heartfelt thanks to our participants for attending today's session. I know that you're all so busy. So, and thanks to you for your insightful questions. We couldn't manage these sessions without you. Before I sum up, I've got one very small ask for our participants, if you wouldn't mind bearing with me. If you could just take 2 minutes of your time, and honestly, it is just 2 minutes, to complete the survey, and that will really help us going forwards in terms for planning events. So thanks in advance if you were able to do that, that'd be super. Just to make you aware that we've got an awful lot of initiatives on the way at the minute in Sustrans Scotland. We're involved with all sorts of things as a result of the current situation. So please keep your eye on our website, and there's also work that's ongoing as well. So just keep checking the website too. Sustrans is delighted to be part of Way to Work. We partner with a number of organisations there. So if you're here and you're an employer and you're thinking, oh, I need a hand, I could do with some top tips in terms of active and sustainable travel, please log on to that website. Again, that's been updated constantly at the minute too. And if you'd like to find out more about Myles' charity, if you look at the Edwards Foundation, but please don't worry, we'll make sure that we send all these links to you, and you can get everything at your leisure. So all it remains for me to say is thank you very much again, Myles. Thank you to participants. Thank you behind the scenes people. You've been amazing. This is the first session in our virtual series about life, work and well-being in times of change. Next week, we look forward to welcoming David Murcroft. Now, Dave is a former world record holder. He's an Olympian, and he subsequently served as the Chief Executive of UK Athletics. He's another all-round great guy, actually. So it'd be great if you could join us then. Please feel free to spread the word. So until then, please keep well and please keep safe. Good afternoon.
Thank you.